Over the past couple of years, Arsenal as a club have quite visibly declined. Everything from the internal management of the club to the players themselves just seems a little bit off, to say the least. And recently it's gotten so bad that the fans have quite literally began to lose their minds.
Don't let him shoot, don't let him shoot, don't let him shoot, don't let him shoot.
But what if I told you that if you hopped in a time machine and travelled back really not too long ago to 2004, you would be presented with an Arsenal side that were nothing other than invincible. Indeed, there was once a time where Arsenal were the team to beat, and I mean that quite literally. In the 2003-2004 season, Arsenal went an entire Premier League season without losing a single match, a feat that had never been accomplished before and has never been repeated since. The legendary Arsenal side consisted of some of the most iconic individuals in history, all working together with a common goal of achieving legendary status. Everyone from the manager to the players were quite simply incredible this season. But all of this means nothing without really going into how this all came about. So with that being said, how did Arsenal become invincible? What's up everyone, I hope you're all doing well and welcome back to the channel. Today, we'll be looking into the individuals that made the Invincible season possible for Arsenal. More specifically, we'll be looking into the players and the manager responsible for this achievement. If you like the content, please feel free to leave a like and maybe even subscribe if you haven't. It really helps the channel out, but no pressure, of course. Moving along, we have a very interesting topic to cover today. But before we really get into the crux of it, I want to give you a fair warning that we'll be covering a lot of information in this video. Therefore, the video is timestamped for you to skip ahead to the sections that you're really interested in. Anyway, let's get right into it. Before we really get into the Invincible season itself, it may be worthwhile to take a look at the seasons prior to it to understand how Arsenal got to this point in the first place. In 1996, Arsenal were at a crossroads. After winning the English First Division in 1989 and 1991, they were poised to push on and continue with this line of achievements. And for anyone confused about the timeline, shortly after this in 1992, the English Premier League was formed, replacing the English First Division as the top division in English football. Unfortunately, between 1991 and 1996, Arsenal failed to even finish above 4th position in the competition, slumping down as low as 12th in the 1994-1995 season. Instead, Sir Alex Ferguson and Manchester United had emerged as a true powerhouse in English football, having won 3 of the 4 Premier League seasons that had taken place at that point in time. Arsenal, on the other hand, were struggling to rekindle their spark from the late 80s and early 90s, with little success. This led to them sacking their manager at the time, Bruce Rioch, in 1996, as he had a rather public falling out with the Arsenal board. Arsenal were thus in the market for a new manager. After some time, Johan Cruyff, who had just come off an incredibly successful tenure with Barcelona, appeared as the front-runner for the job. Instead, in a shock turn of events, Arsenal chose to appoint a relatively unknown French manager by the name of Arsène Wenger at the beginning of the 1996-1997 season. This was met with quite a bit of confusion by everyone associated with the club. After all, Wenger had joined Arsenal after coming off a 1-year stint at Japanese club Nagoya Grampus 8, despite the fact that he had experienced success in football management in both Japan and France. Virtually nobody in England had even heard of him. This prompted the infamous newspaper headline, "Arsène who?" Nonetheless, he took over the reins at the Gunners and his impact was felt almost immediately. He implemented several changes to the training and dieting regimen within Arsenal. This included more rigorous exercise schedules and a ban on alcohol. To many, this may seem as a surprise. Surely professional athletes know that alcohol affects their performances. Despite this, Arsenal actually had a massive drinking culture back in the squad back then. And they weren't the only club, this was widespread within the Premier League, until Wenger showed up at least. In the first 2 years with the club, he brought in several marquee signings such as Nicolas Anelka, Patrick Vieira, Marc Overmars, Emmanuel Petit, and many more. These signings joined up with players that were already at the club, such as Martin Keown, Ian Wright, David Seaman, and Dennis Bergkamp. Wenger was truly putting together a fierce team. In his very first season with the club, he coached Arsenal to a 3rd place finish, their highest finish since they last won the league. In his 2nd season with the club, he coached Arsenal to their first Premier League victory ever, finally reclaiming the top spot in England in 1998. They also won the FA Cup, making Wenger the only foreign manager to have won the double, an FA Cup and a Premier League in the same season. In the years that followed this, Arsenal and Manchester United had probably the most engaging rivalry in Premier League history, in my opinion. Everything from the fans to the players screamed nothing but excitement. Year after year, the league was a rather tight affair, with Arsenal and Manchester United occupying the top two positions almost exclusively. However, United did seem to get the better more often than not. Arsenal had to wait until the 2001-2002 season to reclaim the top spot in the Premier League once more. This season also saw them win another double. By the 2001 season, Arsenal had more or less the same players that they won the Premier League with the first time around. However, some key additions to the team included Thierry Henry, Sol Campbell, and Kolo Touré, to name a few. As fate would have it, the pendulum swung once more in favour of United in the 2002-2003 season. From an Arsenal perspective, this loss in particular was one that stung incredibly deeply. The reasoning behind this is that there was a point during this season where Arsenal were top of the table and it seemed as though retaining the Premier League title was inevitable for them. In fact, prior to the season, Wenger even confidently told the media, "Nobody will finish above us in the league. It wouldn't surprise me if we were to go unbeaten for the whole season." And at the time, realistically, you would have been silly to bet against them. This Arsenal team was in fine form. They went their first 9 matches undefeated and were sat at the top of the Premier League for the majority of the season. However, they hit a rough patch of form and ended up blowing an 8-point lead at the summit of the table. United went on to win the title by 5 points at the end of the season, making this Manchester United's 8th Premier League title at the time. In the 2003-2004 preseason, Arsène Wenger is said to have held a meeting with the team to try to figure out how they ended up losing the season after such an incredible start. Some of the players believed that Wenger's public announcement that they would go unbeaten negatively affected their mentality going into the season. Wenger's response to this was simply, "Look, I said that because I think you can do it, but you must really want it." In the transfer window prior to the season, Arsenal did little business. This was in large part due to the fact they were financing the construction of a new stadium, the Emirates. However, all the same, this didn't make a difference. Wenger truly believed in this group of players and was determined to take Arsenal back to the top. Finally, we come to the moment that we've all been waiting for, the Invincible season itself. First things first, let's take a look at the squad that were at Wenger's disposal at the beginning of the season. In goals, they had Jens Lehmann. The German was actually brought in that very same season from Borussia Dortmund. He arrived as the long-term replacement of the legendary goalkeeper David Seaman, who retired the year prior. Lehmann was a great shot stopper in his day, capable of incredible acrobatics. Now, I don't want to rewrite history here. Lehmann was prone to make mistakes here and there. He exhibited a penchant for rushing off his line and playing in that sweeper-keeper role that so many other German goalkeepers we know have done before. However, he was incredibly reliable for Arsenal this season and more than made up for that with his supreme goalkeeping ability. He played every single minute of the Invincible season. In terms of centre-backs, Sol Campbell and Kolo Touré filled those roles. Now, I just want to extend my apologies to any Tottenham Hotspurs fans that may be watching this video, as I'm sure Sol Campbell's name is the last thing they want to hear. For anyone unaware, Campbell was a former Tottenham Hotspurs player. In 2001, Campbell was nearing the end of his contract with Spurs. Now, it's important to note that at this point in time, he was probably the team's best player. Therefore, obviously Spurs wanted to keep him for as long as possible. After months of negotiations, Spurs offered him a contract that would see him be the highest ever paid player at the club. In roughly the same time frame, he publicly declared that he would never join Arsenal.
What about your situation, Sol? Will you be staying at Tottenham?
I'm staying.
Which makes sense, seeing as they are Spurs' biggest rival. So you can probably guess what happened next. Campbell stated that the reason that he made the switch was because he wanted to play Champions League football. What made the switch even more painful for Spurs fans is that while there were rumours that Campbell could potentially leave Spurs, there were virtually no rumours linking him to Arsenal prior to it happening. It just happened. Oh, and did I mention that he joined Arsenal on a free transfer? That's right. Arsenal took their rival's best player for free. Much to the disappointment of many Tottenham fans, Campbell went on to have an incredible career at Arsenal. He possessed great speed, excellent defensive awareness, and to top it all off, he was a pretty large, physically dominant player. Nowadays, many will remember the Touré brothers from that strangely catchy chant. And a whole host of internet memes. However, both of the Touré brothers, more specifically Kolo Touré, were much more than that. Kolo Touré was primarily a defensive player throughout his career. The beginning of his Arsenal career was no exception. He spent his first few years playing as either a defensive midfielder or a right-back. However, due to the fact that Arsenal were lacking in the centre-back department, he ended up filling in at CB from the beginning of the season. Believe it or not, the Invincible season was the first season of his career that he played in the centre-back role. Standing at 5'10", he wasn't the most physically dominant centre-back, but he possessed great athleticism and a strong tackle. He was able to use that to cover up for any other shortcomings that he had in the centre-back role. Now onto Lauren, one of the unsung heroes of the Invincible side. The Cameroonian international was the starting right-back for the side. However, when he signed for Arsenal in 2000, he predominantly played as a right midfielder for his club at the time, Mallorca. Arsène Wenger has previously stated that despite this, he signed Lauren specifically with the intention of converting him to a right-back and replacing the legendary Lee Dixon. Lauren was a strong ball carrier with electric pace. Lauren was also adept at making marauding overlapping runs on the right flank and tracking back on a moment's notice. All round a great example of a modern fullback. At left back, this team had arguably the best English left back of all time in Ashley Cole. Despite all of his controversies and the fact that he actually played more games for Chelsea than Arsenal at the end of his career, Cole was a born and bred gunner. He rose up within the Arsenal Youth Academy and established himself in the Arsenal first team in the 2000-2001 season. According to another legendary former Arsenal defender, Nigel Winterburn, Cole modelled his game after Roberto Carlos from early on in his career and slowly became one of the best fullbacks around. Highly regarded as one of the most intelligent players in the world during his playing career, Cole had an incredible positional sense and all-round in-game intelligence. In addition to this, he was rapid and had a penchant for attacking down the left wing. Now onto Robert Pires, Arsenal's left midfielder and one of the more crucial members of the side. The Frenchman arrived at Arsenal from Marseille in the year 2000. Unfortunately, he struggled quite a bit to adapt to the physical playstyle of the Premier League. However, after his first full season with the club, he only went from strength to strength, growing in confidence and comfortably getting to grips with the English game. Fast forward to the Invincible season. Pires was now showing the world what he was truly made of. His sublime technical ability and ball control was a joy to watch. Him and Ashley Cole had an almost telepathic understanding of one another on the left flank and enjoyed a very fruitful relationship. At the end of the season, Pires finished with the second highest amount of goals in the Arsenal side with 14 and the joint highest number of assists with 8. Moving along, now how does that iconic saying go? Every great team has at least one Brazilian? Wait, did I just make that up? Regardless, it's probably true, and the Invincibles were no exception. Gilberto Silva, also known as the Invisible Wall, was one of the two central midfielders in this side. He was probably the most defensive of the two, often sitting between the two central defenders and playing the destroyer role that we're all familiar with. After impressing the world in the 2002 World Cup, in which Brazil were triumphant, Silva gained the attention of several coaches around the world. However, he chose to sign for Arsenal. Not a bad choice, to be fair. He slotted straight into the Arsenal lineup upon joining and offered great solidity to the team. He was an excellent man marker, was capable of spraying long, accurate balls across the field, and had the ability to accurately read the game and make crucial interceptions. And now onto one of the true standouts, the captain himself, Patrick Vieira. Along with Gilberto Silva, Vieira was the second central midfielder in the heart of the squad. Realistically, there aren't enough words in the English dictionary that can be used to describe how good this man was and what he meant to Arsenal. He was there from the very beginning of Arsène Wenger's tenure with the club and experienced all of the highs and lows of the Arsenal side from the late 90s to the early 2000s. Standing at a daunting 6'4", Vieira was an absolute monster in terms of physicality and athleticism, possessing immense ball retention ability, aerial prowess, and tackling ability. But don't let his physical qualities fool you. He was so much more than that. His technical ability, dribbling skills, game intelligence, grace on the ball, and all-round competitiveness was unmatched in this era. His versatility was unreal too. He was capable of playing in just about every midfield position with great success. Box-to-box midfielder, defensive midfielder, number 8, take your pick. The Frenchman was the real deal. At right midfield, we have Freddie Ljungberg. Although Arsenal had been scouting him for over a year before he was signed, he was eventually brought into the club in 1998 after Arsène Wenger had seen him play in an international match against England. Wenger hadn't actually seen him play in person, so this was a rather strange move. Nonetheless, he proved to be a great acquisition for Arsenal, scoring on his debut in the league against Manchester United in 1998. Adept at playing on either flank or as a number 10, Ljungberg was very versatile indeed. Now, I know that these next two players are relatively unknown, so I'll excuse you if you haven't heard of them. After all, they're not really a big deal. I mean, they only have statues outside of the Emirates in honor of them. That's right, I'm talking about Dennis Bergkamp and Thierry Henry. Let's start things off with the non-flying Dutchman, Dennis Bergkamp. Although he was given this nickname due to his fear of flying, don't let it fool you. He was one of the best around in his time. The man possessed nothing but grace and sublime technique. Bergkamp was one of a kind. Along with Vieira, Bergkamp is another player that was around since the beginning of Arsène Wenger's tenure at Arsenal. In fact, he was actually at Arsenal since 1995, 1 year before Wenger even arrived. This essentially made him the longest-serving Arsenal player in the main starting lineup at the time of the Invincible season. Capable of playing in pretty much any position across the front line, Bergkamp was best positioned as either a number 10 or as a supporting striker in a two-striker system. Now, I know that I've already mentioned that a few players in this team were blessed with great technical ability and intelligence, but Bergkamp was truly on another level in this department. He had perhaps the best first touch I've ever seen, insanely quick feet, a wide passing range, great balance, and deceptively good acceleration. At the surface, he only scored 4 goals and made 7 assists this season, but his contribution to the team goes well beyond what any stats are able to tell us. Finally, we have the great man himself, Thierry Henry. Honestly, I feel like I don't need to give a description of how good this man really was. Undoubtedly one of the greatest players in Premier League history and, in my opinion, the greatest player to not win the Ballon d'Or. All of this despite the fact that he finished second in the FIFA World Player of the Year awards in 2003 and 2004, as well as second and third in the Ballon d'Or rankings in 2004 and 2006 respectively. But let me try not to get too carried away here. Let's shift the focus back to the Invincible season. Henry was in insane form this season, scoring 30 goals in 37 matches. However, this was hardly surprising at all. After all, he had scored 24 goals in the previous 2 seasons. Wait, I said that wrong. He scored 24 goals in each of the previous 2 seasons. But that's not all. Henry was incredibly unique. So much so that he falls into a category of strikers that realistically doesn't have much company. He was what I like to call a playmaking striker. These players have a knack for dropping deep and creating goal-scoring opportunities for others, all while scoring a multitude of goals themselves. This is the type of player that absolutely cannot live without the ball at their feet. As such, they go searching for it, asking to receive passes wherever they can. Now, I know what you're thinking. Isn't that just an attacking midfielder? Or even a false 9? Well, with the numbers he was putting up, it's incredibly difficult to take him out of the number 9 category. The best example to illustrate this is the 2002-2003 season of the English Premier League, 1 season prior to the Invincible season. In this season, Henry scored 24 goals and made 20 assists, becoming the only player in the history of the Premier League to score 20 goals and assist 20 goals in a single season. To put this into perspective, this had never been done in the history of top-flight European football at the time. That's right, I'm talking Bundesliga, Serie A, Liga 1, La Liga, and the Premier League. And even further to that, this feat has only been repeated once since then, by none other than Lionel Messi in the 2019-2020 season. In this season, Messi scored 25 goals and made 21 assists. This Henry guy, yeah, he was an animal. So now that we have that out of the way and we have a good sense of the protagonists of the story, this is how they lined up. For the most part, the team played in a 4-4-2 formation like so. Thierry Henry was used as the furthest attacker with Bergkamp in support. Vieira operated as a box-to-box midfielder with Gilberto Silva mostly holding his position. But we're not finished here. This wasn't all the talent that they boasted. Coming off the bench, they had veterans such as Martin Keown, Sylvain Wiltord, and Ray Parlour, to name a few. All exceptional players that formed part of the Arsenal squads from previous title triumphs. All of this talent, in conjunction with the incredible man management of Arsène Wenger, led Arsenal to achieving invincible status. As a side note, this team actually continued their unbeaten run into the next season. It was ended by Manchester United on the 24th of October 2004. It's worth mentioning that this was in game week 10 of the following season. All in all, this Arsenal side went 49 games unbeaten, winning 36 and drawing 13. It's definitely an understatement to say that this team was outrageously good. In light of the achievements that was the Invincible season, you would expect that Arsenal would push on and grow into an English powerhouse, the way that so many dominant teams have done in the Premier League. You would unfortunately be wrong. Ever since 2004, Arsenal failed to even come close to winning the Premier League again. They did make it to the Champions League final in 2006, which they lost to Barcelona, and they have won several FA Cups since then. However, considering that this team was once invincible, they have greatly underperformed in recent years. But what happened to Arsenal? Exactly what is it that took them from this to this? The story of Arsenal's downfall has been pretty widely documented. A simple search on YouTube or Google brings up hundreds of results on why this happened. However, in truth, there are several reasons for why Arsenal have regressed since this legendary season. Many have placed the blame for Arsenal's downfall on the construction of the £400 million stadium, the Arsenal board of directors and their lack of compassion for the club, the departure of several star players in the years that followed and inadequate recruitment for replacements, and many other factors. Now, all of those reasons are more than likely true. You'll see no arguments from me regarding any of those reasons stated. However, I personally believe that the main reason why Arsenal did not create an empire in the Premier League is mostly due to the fact that other teams evolved and adopted newer, fresher tactics. I mean, Arsenal had a world-class team with players that had just gone undefeated throughout an entire season. Bar one or two players, most of the team was still in their physical prime, and the team had an average age of about 27. So realistically, what stopped them from retaining the Premier League using similar or even the same tactics? Directly after the Invincible season, Jose Mourinho took over at Chelsea, and alongside Roman Abramovich, conducted a massive squad overhaul. Although Chelsea spent close to £100 million on players, this wasn't the only thing that changed. Mourinho brought in a highly effective style of football, one that we really had not seen in the Premier League up until that point. One such change that he employed was changing the Premier League meta from the 4-4-2 formation to a 4-3-3. This allowed for a more congested midfield, giving rise to the destroyer role in the Premier League, otherwise known as the Makalele role. This, along with many other innovations, led to Chelsea winning the league and walking it for the next 2 seasons. Following this, Manchester United saw yet another period of dominance, with star players rising such as Cristiano Ronaldo, Wayne Rooney, Carlos Tevez, Rio Ferdinand, and many more stepping up to the plate. Sir Alex Ferguson rebuilt the United squad that dominated throughout the 90s and the early 2000s and created a whole new empire. This United team achieved a three-peat, winning the Premier League for 3 years in a row between 2007 and 2009. The point that I'm trying to make here is that Arsenal just could not keep up. Whether this was because of the previous reasons stated or not, no matter who you are, if you ever get to the top, just know that your opposition is always plotting a way to overthrow you. And unfortunately, since then, Arsenal have failed to find a way back. However, that's not to say that things won't change. Football is a fickle sport after all. One day you're on top, the next you've fallen off, and the day directly after that, you're on top again. Arsenal could very well come out guns blazing in the near future. As a side note, I really hope that you all appreciate that I waited until the end of this video to make an Arsenal pun. And there we have it. A brief trip down memory lane to the glory of days gone by. Arsenal, the Invincibles. I'd be interested to hear what you all think of this invincible Arsenal team. In addition to this, what do you think went wrong in the years that followed this incredible season, and who do you think was to blame for Arsenal's regression? If you made it this far, thanks so much for watching. As always, the sources for all information used in this video can be found in the description. Although I had a lot of fun making this video, it took quite a bit of time to make. If you liked the video, please feel free to leave a like as it massively helps the channel out. And finally, if you want to watch more great content, please consider checking out my channel and perhaps even subscribing. Anyway, that's me. I trust you're all having an incredible day and will have an incredible day further. Cheers, and I'll catch you in the next one.